Okay, let's first look back at that game, Delhi v Rajasthan. Let's perhaps focus a little bit on Rajasthan, whose season has come to an end. And in some ways, it's a slightly depressing way for the season to end, Daniel, for a team that promises a lot, that has so much, that they've changed the way they tend to think. They bought in big players. For some reason, it just looks like they put themselves in the corner and they never found their way back then.
It feels like a familiar season. I think the last few years they've had periods where you think they're on top, they've got a good team, good selection, then other times they've been inconsistent and they've sort of found themselves sort of 5th, 6th, 7th a lot over the last few years. So another season where they're probably disappointed with where they're at. And if you look at their team at the back end of the competition compared to the one at the front, it's very different. And that was forced upon them with selection, players going across to the World Cup, injuries. So a frustrating season for them, but I still think they've got a good squad. So you look towards the future, you look towards what they've got coming out next year. If they can keep their squad together, then they do have a chance of improving, but they all are about some big players and they need to find some complementary pieces as well.
Yeah, we're looking at these talking points for Rajasthan, and one of those is that their top 5, the struggles of their batting. We speak of one-dimensional players, or rather one set of players, similar type of players, all like to bat in the top 3, and you just look at the amount of changes that they actually made. In numbers 1 to 5, they've used 11 players in 14 matches. Hyderabad and Mumbai have used 11 and 12. I think that's more just changing according to situation. Rajasthan essentially have had the issue of finding out who their best batsmen are at those positions. Point Dan makes that it's still a good squad. So are they just guilty of not identifying roles at the start of the season? Or was it a question of personnel?
Yeah, I think it's point about players complementing the big players. I mean, you look at a Butler, like you said, that changes obviously because of Ajinkya Rahane not being in form. Steve Smith coming in and then dropping him for a game. Sanju Samson missing a couple of games. Rahul Tripathi being pushed up. It's also to do with the results. I think it's not enough. Ben Stokes, we forget, the one thing Rajasthan have done, unlike a lot other auctions, they spend a lot of money. They've spent almost all the money on big name players, whether it's a Archer or a Stokes. So the squad is there. The performances haven't been good enough for one reason or the other, and that's why the balance sometimes makes a difference. You've got to find the right 11 and find the right 11 quickly. I think captaincy was a bit of an issue, which I think Steve Smith might solve that. Makes a huge difference. Even if it's a 20-over game, it maybe makes a even bigger difference at times where if you find the right guy to make those big calls when you need to.
Okay, you need big players to finish games off with bat or ball, and our analysis of Rajasthan Royals suggests that their big players were guilty of not putting their hands up enough times, and we're focusing on the likes of Jaidev Unadkar again. Comes in for big money the second time. He's on 8.5 crore a year. Sometimes it's harsh to judge performance with auction value, but it is something the owners, I'm sure, Dan, at some point would try to see, are you getting returns for what you've invested? Do you have that death bowling pedigree? In fact, at the last game of the season, he wasn't even making the 11.
Well, I think they did. At the start of the season, you look at Archer, Unadkar, Kulkarni. I think the management would have said, we have some options here. We have some bowlers who can perform that role. So I think sometimes you just got to step back from the selection and the auction and say, well, the players haven't performed in these situations. And I think they would have had high expectations for Unadkar. I think Archer's probably done a pretty good job, pretty consistent. They may have wanted more out of Stokes with the ball. Yeah. So the personnel's there. It's just that case of how do we get a performance out of them consistently? And that may be selection, that may be a lot of different things, but it's up to the players to step up in those situations.
You mentioned Ben Stokes, and yeah, they were hamstrung to a degree with Ben Stokes, who actually has had very good IPLs in the past. In 2018, he had a better IPL for the Royals. In fact, there was a great IPL that he had for Pune just prior to that. We were looking at his numbers in 2019, just didn't get it right with the bat, and he stopped bowling, in fact, halfway through the tournament. Does Ben Stokes strike you as the kind of player that you'd still want to retain because he could have that big season, or at 12.5 crore, is that something Rajasthan need to look at?
Are you going to find someone better than Ben Stokes, or two players as good as Ben Stokes can be on his day? I mean, he's had a tough year coming into this IPL anyway. So, you'd want him to perform better, obviously. But we've seen him do it in the IPL for another team with the bat and the ball. I mean, the year Pune made the finals, he was their star performer, and he was on big money then as well. So I don't think it's the pressure anymore of the money, which sometimes you can feel. So as tough as it could be, it's been 2 average seasons. I mean, this one wasn't a great season. Last season was slightly better. To let Ben Stokes go, who has skills with both bat and the ball when he's fit. I don't think, unless you find a able enough replacement, someone who's as good as him or better, I can't imagine them letting go of Ben Stokes, because you can actually build a team around that sort of player, which lends you the balance.
Sometimes you can't do anything if your best player just doesn't fire.
True, and I think there's no reason why next year he won't fire. And I think because we've seen him do it so many times in the past, whether it's IPL or international level, there's absolutely zero reason to give up on him, because I think you hold out. You see players in their best, so you remain optimistic, and it could be next year that's the time, and it could turn everything round. And if you've given him up to another team and he does it, then the
That's
frustration.
exactly what's going to happen. That's exactly
the
what's
frustration is far too much for anyone to handle. So
Every-
hold on to him. Hold on to
every
him.
chance.
The
Every
good
chance he
part
goes
about
for
him
it.
going in the auction is he might make 15 crores instead of 12 and a half.
That'll be good for Ben Stokes. But it's also his England teammate Josh Butler, who's heavily relied on once again. He started this year's IPL like he ended last year's. And lots of runs at the top of the order, but they had to find ways of actually working without Josh Butler when he went in after 7 or 8 games for the birth of his child. And Josh Butler, with him 23% of the runs in 2019, 26%. To be fair, they actually beat Mumbai and Sunrisers after Josh Butler had gone back. Mumbai Sunrisers and KKR after Josh Butler had gone back. So you take 6 points of those to think there's still quality in that team. But are they always just guilty of starting poorly, making tactical errors, and then realizing some in the middle you got to change it? Change captain, change batting order, drop Tripathi, make Rahane play differently. Why does it take 6 or 7 games to realize the same mistake?
The captaincy is an interesting one. I think it would have been a big call to bring Steve Smith straight back in after everything that's happened. So I think they made
It's almost like they wanted to do it but couldn't.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what happened. I think they knew what they wanted to do, and they almost had to have a poor start to the season to allow that to happen, which seems unfortunate, but that was the situation. I don't think there's an over-reliance on Butler. I think all teams have their special players and they want them to perform, and so just because Butler's performing and the others aren't quite as good, I don't think it means it's an over-reliance. I think the expectation is around the likes of Tripathi and Rahane, Ben Stokes. Those guys can lift only a tiny bit, and all of a sudden they become a very good team. So I think sometimes when teams have these terrible seasons, they just throw everything out and start again, where all you're looking for is 5 to 10% improvement, and then you've got a great team again.
Yeah, I mean, they found a Riyan Parag towards the end of that competition. So next year, if he keeps improving the way he has, what he's shown this year, that could be a real good option coming low down the order. So the personnel's there. I think they've spent enough money to get the personnel together. Unfortunately, the performances haven't been as good as they would have liked.
Yeah, Riyan Parag, standout player towards the end of the season, or at least promising to be a standout player going forward for the Rajasthan Royals. You also had Shreyas Gopal, who's had another prolific season for Rajasthan with ball. So that's turned out well for them. There are good things that have happened. They have picked up tough points. They beat Mumbai home and away, which no other team can credit just yet. Kolkata have that chance, but otherwise it's only been Rajasthan Royals that have done that. And maybe if Ashwin wouldn't have munkered Butler on the first game, things would have been different. But as it turns out, that's the season. The curtains come down on Rajasthan Royals season.
Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and leave your comments in the comment section below. Click on the bell icon for notifications.